Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman, here with my co-host Chris, who I think might be getting a suntan these days in the Pacific Northwest, McNulty.
Well, thanks, Mark. Yes, it is a beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. Not that they happen very often. It rains. Don't come. Don't visit. We like to paint our roads. Yeah, spring and summer are really glorious times out here. And it is a glorious time to talk about Visio. Today, we're talking with Nishat Kumar and Mukul Kumar about some exciting news coming from Visio. We're going to dig into all things Visio, the past, the present, the future, with the goal of your ending this podcast completely fluent on how to diagram awake or even asleep.
Do you dream of electric diagrams? That's what I want to ask you, Chris.
I dream of electric sheep diagrams, if we're talking about it. But, Visio is an interesting product. It's gone through a whole bunch of pivots and morphs throughout its history. And I'm kind of looking forward to hearing about it directly from the team today.
Yeah, me too, because a lot of what it is now, I think from the nature of what we focus on in this podcast, I know your history and I'm just about to share where at least I started with Visio, but it has a rich history with SharePoint, has a rich history with building solutions and making them visual and tying them to workflow. But to be frank, when I started on the SharePoint team, one of my first introductions to Visio was an enterprise SKU listed feature. It was one of those enterprise features, Visio services, form services, Excel services, and I just kind of kept it as a line item, and I saw people do some fairly skilled things with Visio tied to workflow. But I'm curious, when you think of your history as a consultant, working at Microsoft and beyond, where did you first come in contact with Visio?
That's around the same time. Visio was one of those tools that, in some ways was like OneNote, and that it has a certain power when you're just doing things locally. But once you started to network connect it and then internet connect it, it got to be, much more powerful. And that's with when it came into the workflow realm, one of the early builds of SharePoint Server had the ability to use Visio to build a diagram of the workflow the way that you wanted it. You could just drag shapes on to it, and then it would go and construct the workflow for you so that you didn't even have to write the code-like blocks that were part of SharePoint Designer. And that was a time when SharePoint was sort of the center of bringing together all of the on-premises collaboration tools, and so everything was plugging into it. Which is why I, like you, scratched my head the first time I heard about Visio services. What would those be?
We kind of initially tapped into them. And again, I know the world was doing a lot more than what my visibility was at the time. But we worked with the company 3Sharp to build out a really rich demo to highlight the workflow capabilities. At the time, it was Workflow 2010 and then into 2013. But it was purely to visualize, I kicked off a workflow and now where am I in it? It was a pretty complex workflow with lots of stages of reaching out to people and to other systems. And it had just a really nice way to diagram it. So you could visually articulate what does this workflow do? But in a run state, it actually showed, this lit up, this went into this blinked and didn't blink. So you could actually see for those longer running workflows. That was pretty cool. And I will tip my hat to the 3Sharp team. They did a really nice job to show the art of the possible, which I think got good traction in the ways that I heard people receive it. The other side was the real bland version of what does Visio services do. And it was just to load a Visio diagram in a browser. And that has huge, powerful implications. But to just see that without requiring Visio, the desktop client, for everybody to view a Visio diagram, that was pretty huge.
In hindsight, we sort of take being able to deliver things through a browser for granted. But it was still kind of novel then, that you had all of the Office web server. And the first time I installed that and, magically I'm editing a PowerPoint without PowerPoint. How is that? Increasingly, it's like our principal vehicle for innovating is how we think about how it plugs in through M365. And, I carry that forward to Visio. Visio is, it's not PowerPoint. It's not MS Paint. It is sitting in that realm in between them. And it's very much if you need something that is better than stick figures and something that isn't, a Monet. Although, my paintings vary between, I'm about as photorealistic as Giacometti combined with Jackson Pollock. So I need all the help that I can get. And like the tools that Visio has to let you quickly convey an idea. Because ultimately, I really think it isn't just about drawing a picture to describe a process. It's really about how do we capture an idea in a way that renders it so that people can grok it quickly and be able to understand it, make comments, make changes. And, we do that with documents and we do that with spreadsheets. And I think explaining not, what we're doing is really important. I think Visio has a lot to offer in that realm.
I feel like I wish we were able to just take a trip to the Louvre, and maybe they've opened up a new wing for all of the Visio diagrams and flowcharts that have been created. And I would love to see the variety of things on napkins that then graduate into being built with Visio. So maybe we can carve off a little of our budget to go to France and see if that wing is available. But Chris, I think before we talk with Nishant and with Mukul, I thought we would just touch lightly on some of the recent news from Ignite, because when we talk with them, we're going to let them break their really new news, and it's pretty exciting. But just to get beyond Visio services of the past, Visio working in the browser, there's now some work with the data visualization in Excel. So there's a Visio add-on. They've done a lot of work to make the Visio web client, so not just to be able to view a diagram, but to actually be able to create in the web. And there are a number of things that they're doing with Azure to make diagramming in the cloud a lot more at scale, and so that there's less infrastructure to have to be deployed. If you were to, squint at what that news is and what you know about Visio, where do you kind of see Visio today? What's the role of Visio today?
I really do see it for myself as a way to explain a process. And I know it does many more things, and I'm really interested in learning about those. But, being able to quickly render something that's fairly sophisticated. I've always been a little bit in awe of some of the, major consulting firms of the world when they show up with a PowerPoint file, but it's got really intricate sets of swim lanes, and here's where documents are flying around, and here's where people make approvals and all those sorts of things. And you can look at it and sort of get it very quickly. And I really would like to be able to do more to start there rather than just standing at a whiteboard, because frankly, for the past year plus, I haven't been standing in front of my whiteboard. And it's one of the things I haven't started doing here in my house. And being able to get that skill would be really helpful for me. What are some of your hopes for what's coming up?
Yeah, my hope is that even though I don't consider myself a Visio expert, in the last few months, I have created 2 or 3 helpful Visio diagrams that other people have benefited from. I've maintained, I've built out, I've added to them. And it has been something where my comfort level with Visio, I would say, is still pretty basic. I was able to accomplish it. And I'd love to see the direction of either directly in Visio, just gets easier, more powerful, and some of the work that you can do when you have the diagramming capability in Excel powered by Visio. That kind of approach just makes it a little bit more truly back to the name, a Visio service, but one that's really for everybody. I think that's a direction that I feel I'm being brought in how much easier it is. So I feel like with your Louvre analogy, I am maybe going to go get a currency exchange, get a few euros so we can get a ticket to go see and learn a little bit more from Mukul and Nishant to learn more about Visio.
Hi, I'm Olivia Neal, host of the new show Public Sector Future. I'm the Director of Digital Transformation in Microsoft's worldwide public sector team. Having spent almost all of my career working in government, I've seen firsthand how using digital approaches can transform the services that public sector organizations offer and the way they work. This show is for anyone else who also cares about using digital tools and technologies in the public sector to deliver better outcomes to the people being served and to all of us. We explore stories from around the world where public servants have been successful at driving change. You'll meet the people behind the stories and hear their first-hand experiences and their lessons learned. Throughout the series, we'll be discussing technology and trends, as well as the cultural aspects of making change happen and making it stick. My guests include people who have led programs in government and the public sector. They include academics pursuing leading thinking and pushing our boundaries, and international experts from intergovernmental organizations like the OECD.
Well, I think the last year has visibly and viscerally illustrated that innovation is not something that governments can leave to others. If the world is changing, then what governments are doing will also need to change. It's an ongoing process, and we have to get better at that.
Topics we discuss include how police forces can use new technologies to be more effective, what the future of legislation could look like, and how surgeons can deliver vital care without even being in the same room as a patient.
That is the greatest thing one can do as you're driving innovation from within the public sector, is to share. We all have a responsibility here to solve these big problems.
You can find Public Sector Future wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to follow the show to keep up with all things digital transformation and to better prepare yourself and your organization for the future. To learn more about what we do, visit aka.ms/Public Sector Future.
It is time for Chris and I to talk with Mukul and Nishant from the Visio team. They are both on the product marketing management team focused on Visio, but better than hearing from me, let's first talk with Mukul. Mukul, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is here at Microsoft?
Hey, Mark. Hey, Chris. Yeah, thanks for this opportunity, first of all. Hi, everyone. I'm Mukul. I am the product marketing manager for Visio. I am sort of the end-to-end Visio marketing worldwide person. I love working for Visio. It's been 3 years, Microsoft, kind of working on all things Visio. Yeah, I love it. I love talking to our customers. I love going to events and representing Visio, talk about Visio. So I'm very happy to sort of be here today and talk about Visio and have a cool announcement for you.
Nishant, can you talk a little bit about kind of your role too and how you came to work with Microsoft and with Visio?
Absolutely. So hi, Chris. Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. My name is Nishant, and I'm also a product marketing manager in the Visio team. I started working on Visio very recently. Prior to that, I was working on other Microsoft products such as Microsoft Teams and Azure. So I enjoy technology in general, and I always try to learn as much as possible. And I find Microsoft very inspiring because we are working on so many key challenges that the world is facing today. And I'm very happy to be here to talk a little bit about how Visio is contributing in that direction.
So we wanted to start with a two-part question, and there will be some people in our audience that know Visio and know it to the nth degree, but we want to make sure that there are a lot of ways to understand what Visio is, what it does, and for those that didn't know, kind of it comes in a couple of different formats, web and mobile and all of that. So to get a clear understanding of essentially what is Visio, Nishant, do you mind just telling us kind of the 100 level overview of what is Visio?
Absolutely. I work on Visio every day. So to me, Visio is a lot of things. But if I have to explain this in one sentence, then I would say Visio is a diagramming solution that helps you visualize information so that you could communicate clearly. So if I have to say this in a simpler manner, most of us perceive information or process information better and faster when it's presented visually. And so no matter what your profession is, if you are a professional diagrammer or you are a business professional who uses diagrams that go well with other material, or you're an educator or a student who uses diagrams to clearly talk about some concept, everyone is using diagrams. It could be sometimes very complex. Sometimes it could be like a floor plan, an office layout, and sometimes it could be a very simple thing like a timeline to track the progress of a project, or a process diagram to show how one thing flows from one point to another point. So we all use diagrams in a lot of ways, probably because we think that visual communication is very effective. It helps us in bringing ideas to life or engage others in discussions. That's why I think visual communication is very powerful, and Visio is a solution that helps you create those visuals easily and very effectively.
If we start to build the diagram of, like you said, visually in our head, what is Visio, and we start to kind of get an understanding of what the building blocks are for people being able to communicate visually. Mukul, if you don't mind, with that context of what is Visio, another way to look at it is, what is Visio in the context of Microsoft 365? What is its largest role to play in that broader portfolio of apps?
Yeah, Mark, that's a great question. And that comes up a lot, obviously, because, Visio is still seen as sort of like the standalone, product, even though we are within the M365 suite of things. So how does it really fit, right? And again, I'll just come back to what Satya says about Microsoft, that our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And, we all know that, as information workers or as process engineers, we have Microsoft Word to write, put down our thoughts in written words. We have PowerPoint where we, it's something presentable. We have Excel, where you have tons of data, all structured, and you can come up with insights. And so Visio really, provides that visual aspect to this suite, right? So, and I come back to the simple phrase of saying picture is worth 1,000 words. And so Visio is just exactly that. So, Visio works really well with all the other apps I just mentioned, and it just adds that visual layer to that information. So think about just how the data is flowing in your in whatever process you're working on, right? You can show that with a process diagram, or you can come up with a swim lane diagram. You can even do mind mapping to kind of share your ideas or ideate on a new project that you're working on. And all these things are best done in Visio because it's such a simple tool to, work with, and you have all your familiar Office-like experiences in there.
I'd love to have you expand on that a little bit. When you think about the value of Microsoft 365, there's lots of tools in there that people may try, even if they're not perfect. I know there's a lot for someone who is, say, a Visio novice who's coming to this afresh. There are tools that live inside of places like PowerPoint or Word, where you have smart art and you can structure some visuals to suggest a process. But is Visio just doing the same thing there?
That's a great question. Again, Visio is in that sort of in the market of diagramming, right? That's where we play. And so if you talk about that market, there are obviously so many offerings there, right? Good ones. But really how we like to think about it is, think about the two axes, right? So one axis, you have your simplicity to complexity, right? How simple it is, all the way up to how complex can it be, right? And then the other axis is where you think about, the types of diagramming, right? So is it just for org charting, or is it for process documentation, or is it all the way up to, let's say, electrical schematics, right? So if you look at this space, in context of those two axes, right, you have products like, let's say, PowerPoint, where you can basically draw anything you want, but it's going to be super simple because, the shapes are not that smart. You don't connect data to it. And so, even though it can do a lot of things, it'll be super simple. And then on the other end, you can talk about a specialized, let's say, HR software, which does org charting, and it does it really well, right? You can get super complex on that. And then at the extreme end, you have things like AutoCAD, where, you can do pretty much anything you want to a very high degree of complexity. But, I don't necessarily see people doing org charts on AutoCAD, right? So if you think about Visio in that space, it sort of sits right in the middle where you can pretty much do anything you want from a visual standpoint. You can start with a org chart, you can do process diagrams, you can do electrical schematics, you can even do an algebra homework on that and whatnot, right? And it's not just a simple tool. You can connect your visuals to data. It can get pretty complex as well. but it's still a 2D, easy to use solution. And so it sort of sits right in that sweet spot, which is where you can do pretty much anything you want visual related, but you also have tons of features to work with, and that's sort of the beauty of Visio.
One of the things that I've appreciated, and I would list myself out as a relative novice to Visio, and here not only to host you talking about Visio, but I'm also pulling up a seat because I'd like to learn a little bit more about it. And when I think of one of the common things I use Visio for, it's for a timeline, and I know that I could accomplish it in PowerPoint. But the thing that it does in Visio is I set a date for where I want to drop the pin, and then the pin moves to that location exactly based on how I spaced out month, week, years, whatever my timeline looks like. Whereas in PowerPoint, I'd have to mindlessly and frustratingly move the pin, if I changed the date on something, and probably not get it quite in the right aspect ratio. But whatever it is, that's me. When I think of the different types of people, and I heard you describe it as being an easier tool, I would have thought in the past people might think of Visio as a professional tool. And I don't want to list it at that, but I want to get your take on it. And maybe, Nishant, you can help us understand from a personas or a use case perspective, what is that range of who can use Visio? And is it a scary tool, or is it something that, is user-friendly?
Yeah, sure. So when Mukul was talking about what kind of users can use Visio, I was thinking about it. It could be for someone who has very simple needs, and it could also be a good solution for someone who has more complex needs. But the question is, who is currently using it today? The short answer would be that you can do so many things in Visio that the possibility of what you can create in Visio is limitless. So anyone can use it. When we think about our users, we mostly think about them in three categories. The first set of users, we call them power diagrammers. Users, for them, diagramming tool is a requirement for their job. You can think of someone, a professional who works on creating floor plans. So this professional would need a diagramming tool, and a tool that has industry-specific shapes that can help this person quickly create diagrams. But because this person is using its own creativity, this person would want it to be customizable, and this person might not be the only one working on it. So they would want to collaborate with others as well. So they need a solution that can have all of these things. And Visio is a perfect solution for this sort of need, in which you can find industry-specific shapes, you can easily collaborate with others, and you can customize the way you want to. So for these power diagrammers, it's definitely a great solution. Then we come to a second set of users, and we could call them business diagrammers. For these people, this is not the most important part of their job, but still it is significant. For example, think of any process owners, such as an IT admin, an HR person who has to maintain documents that have processes. So their job is not to create anything from scratch, but their job is very iterative. They don't want to spend hours on a diagramming solution. They just want to quickly get done with things. But at the same time, they need professional level of formatting, a good looking diagram. So for them also, Visio is a great solution. And there comes the last set of people like you and me, who we call novice or basic diagrammers. We don't create diagrams very often. We need diagrams to support other materials so that we could clearly convey the meaning. We don't necessarily have good diagramming skills, but at the same time, we want something that looks professional. And Visio is again a good tool for that. You can very easily create simple, most widely used diagrams such as Venn diagram or a matrix diagram. So it is for all the personas, but what we have seen initially when we just had the desktop app, we saw that most of our users are advanced users for who diagramming is a very important part of their job. But when we made this web app available to our users, we realized that more and more business users have started using Visio. And now we are realizing this need. We are hearing our customers, basic diagrammers, that they also want this sort of sophisticated solution that can help them in creating professional diagrams very easily. Now we are thinking about how we can expand the user base of Visio and make it available to anyone who wants to create diagrams. So our purpose is basically to make diagramming easy. Currently, more advanced and intermediate level users are using it, but we want to make it available to everyone.
Totally get that. I mean, I know, back in my days of using Visio on the desktop, it was usually because I needed to construct complex flowcharts for usually some sort of software, but definitely understand it has power and relevance for a much broader set of users. So I'd love to have you give us your perspective on at Microsoft, what are we doing to bring the power of Visio to more users?
I'm glad that you asked this question. So today, one of the reasons that we are here to announce a very exciting news. We've decided to add Visio in Microsoft 365 suite so that most of our M365 customers can now access Visio for their diagramming need. So as I was talking earlier, we realized that a lot more number of professionals are realizing this need of visual communication, especially in these times when we are mostly collaborating or communicating virtually. So it's a very effective and efficient way of communication. That's what led us to thinking that how we can make it available to more people. And that's where we decided that we should make Visio available to our commercial Microsoft 365 users. And guess what? It's going to be at no additional cost. You will have one more app in your suite, but you won't have to pay anything for this. This new app in Microsoft 365 suite will be a web app. It will have the core functionalities of Visio, and it will meet most of your essential needs. You can very easily create, edit, or share files and have professional looking diagrams. We realize that diagramming is not easy for everyone, and this is our purpose, to make it easy for anyone who is looking to create good diagrams.
If Visio, the online version, Visio for the web, at no additional cost within the Microsoft 365 application toolkit that most of our commercial customers have and for sure will now have, inclusive of Visio. Mukul, if you just think in terms of the history of Visio and the role that it played, but at the time it was for some, or for those that invested it, as we start to open it up and make it available to all of Microsoft 365 customers at no additional cost, what do you think is going to change for a lot of people with this addition to Visio at their fingertips?
Great question. Just to make it clear, nothing is going to change for folks who already have purchased a Plan 1 and Plan 2. Plan 1 and Plan 2 are still going to be reserved as, a high capability Visio solution, right, outside of your M365 suites. What you're getting is, if you're a commercial M365 user, you don't get Visio by default. And starting today, you're gonna get a Visio web app with, as Nishant pointed out, the core capabilities of the Visio web app present there. So, if you're an information worker, if you only work with your Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, whatnot, starting today, you can start creating Visio diagrams with a few of the popular templates. You can start ideating with your team members. So you don't have to necessarily go out and buy a Plan 1 or a Plan 2 if you don't have those advanced needs, so to say, right? But, we don't want to stop you from collaborating with your teammates who have Plan 1 and Plan 2. And that's really the purpose, that we want to make sure that the core capabilities, the essential features, and the most popular templates, are available to anyone in your organization and not just to folks who have Plan 1 and Plan 2.
Let's help our users understand, now that they're getting this, how do they know they have it? Where will they be able to find Visio in case they want to start playing with this as they're listening to the broadcast even.
Once it gets lighted up in your tenant, you should be able to start seeing Visio in a couple of places, right? So you can definitely go to the Visio web app, which is, the main Visio landing page, and you will not be prompted for, that you don't have it. It'll just start showing you all the templates that are available to you as part of your M365 suite, right? So you can definitely start creating diagrams there. You can start sharing it. They automatically get saved on your OneDrive, all that good stuff. But let's say if you are in Teams, in Teams, if you go to your Files tab, if you click New, it's going to show you a new Visio diagram, right? So in addition to creating new Word, Excel, PowerPoint, you can also create a Visio diagram right from there. Similarly, even in your Office portal, you will start seeing the Visio app icon, and you can click that, which will take you to the landing page, and then that's where you can get started. So a bunch of places where you will start seeing Visio, and also some of our users may also have kind of experience the public the preview we did in Excel, where if you're in Excel, you can create a Visio diagram there using the Visio add-in. And if you click that, you should be able to edit, and which will again take you to the landing page. All these, so in sum, basically, earlier if you didn't have Plan 1 or Plan 2, you would only be able to view those files from your teammates or colleagues. But now you should be able to edit those files as well to some extent, and also create new files.
So I'm actually right now, I'm logged into the Visio web app. And in everything you've been describing, I can see where I can create a new blank drawing, start with a template. I want to ask you in a second about just, one of the experiences and maybe step us through if I'm creating new, how might that look? But I think one of the other benefits is I have built out over time about 3 or 4 timelines that I've also shared. And I know in the real distant past, if I shared it with somebody, they would have had to have had the Visio client on their desktop to view the work that I had done. But most recently, in a couple of the diagrams that I've built out, I've actually shared it, and the experience is just like anything else on the web. It loads up really nicely in the browser, and I've shared it with others that had that same experience. So there's a lot of really nice ways to get started, to share. But can you walk us through, if I go to Visio and I click on flowchart template, walk us through what this new experience is. Not so much that it's a new experience, but if it's a new app to people, it's going to be a new experience.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad that you asked this question, because we think Microsoft 365 users will be able to get most out of this web app if this is simple to use, if this is intuitive for them. And that's what we have tried. So if you'll go to Visio home page, and let's say you want to create a process diagram or a timeline, all you have to do is just to select from the number of pre-crafted templates, select the one that you like, and then you can start working on that template. If you want to customize anything, you can drag and drop shapes and easily customize it. If you want to change the color, you can change the color. You can easily make it bigger or smaller. So everything is very intuitive and very much office-like experience that you are already used to offer. And not just that, let's say if you realize that you need input from your colleagues, you want to see if they also like your diagram. So we have collaboration features as well. Similar to Word or PowerPoint, they can come in Visio app, leave a comment, not just a general comment, they can also leave a shape-specific comment. So you can very easily collaborate with your co-workers. And that's just one way of using Visio. Because now it's available in Microsoft 365, we thought it would be great if we could provide our customers an integrated experience. For example, let's say you and I, we are talking in Teams, and I want to create a diagram to brainstorm with you. So I don't have to go to Visio app and then share my screen with you to discuss that diagram. I could simply open it in Teams and start diagramming with you. So it's very easy to brainstorm or discuss in other Microsoft apps such as Teams. Another example would be, let's say you are working in Excel you have a large volume of data and you're thinking, how can I visualize this data? So it's very simple. Visio is available there as well. With just a few clicks, you can convert that data into an image, a visual graphic that will help you grasp the data very easily. So this is the kind of experience we've tried to provide through this web app, where everything is very intuitive, very office-like, and you should not be scared in using this app. You should not think at all that this is just for professionals. This is for everyone. Anyone can create professional-looking diagrams very easily using this app.
I've been noodling with it here as we're discussing, and I am really impressed. A lot of things that I know historically, setting up swim lanes for flowcharts, which used to be done almost by hand with all that painting. It's really, I'm finding I can make something that looks really good here in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. So that's really, really well done.
I've been dragging and dropping a few things and making connectors. And one of my favorite things, if I were to wire this up to just a simple process or to replicate the visual of a simple process, as I move things around, the more that I make those connectors and reshapes and sizes, but I have to make changes or I make edits, the pain that it used to be if I was working with just a pure drawing tool versus an actual diagramming tool, and how it comes through the web is a really nice experience. One thing I wanted to throw in there just as it caught my eye based on what you were saying and just knowing the tech behind it is by default, when you start a new diagram, it's saved in OneDrive. If you save it, obviously, like you said, working in Teams, or if you start from SharePoint, same files platform in the background, that's SharePoint, but it really gives you the benefits of, well, that means we know how you're going to be able to share it because you have a common sharing experience. Co-authoring is going to work because it's on a platform that supports co-authoring. So to see how it's wired in, not only is the user interface great, but the back end knowing that where it's being stored and you have multiple entry points to get started, to share, to co-author, shouldn't be any different than how people think about Office documents. Visio is an Office document type, and it's really great to hear. And then like Chris and I are kind of playing around with it, it's also great to see.
Now, you were discussing Plan 1 and Plan 2. So I know that those are even more powerful capabilities that people have beyond what we're releasing with the web tool. Can you kind of explain what some of those scenarios look like?
Sure. Plan 1 and Plan 2 are plans, but what's inside them is what matters. And Plan 1 is really the web product package as Plan 1, right? So all you get is the Visio web app. And that's to say that, hey, if you think of yourself as someone who, creates these Visio documents on the fly anywhere, and you don't necessarily need the sort of the extra horsepower of the desktop app, that's the one for you, right? You can open it in any internet browser, within Teams, it's always saved in your OneDrive and, all that good stuff. You can open it on your Surface tablet, on your laptop, what have you, right? So that's the beauty of the Visio web app. And then, going on to Plan 2 is basically everything that we make, right? So it includes the web app plus the desktop app. And this desktop app is again, different from your, Visio Standard or Visio Professional, in a way that, it's being constantly updated, right? You get new features almost every quarter. Again, even the desktop app, it saves your file on OneDrive. You can open it on the Visio web app for commenting and viewing. It works in sync with the web app, but it's again, it has more horsepower. It's for advanced users who want data linking and just advanced features, which I don't even know myself. But there you have it. Like people love the desktop app, but the web app really sort of complements that desktop app in a way that it lets you build a Visio diagram from anywhere in any time.
So for clarity, we will provide links where people can go kind of read the matrix left to right. What does each plan offer? The biggest news is if you have those needs that are sufficed by Visio for the web, then you have it. And then you can kind of go and grow from there. But let's maybe take a minute, for the first time somebody uses Visio for the web, or now has the access to it so that they can do that. What would you say are some pieces of wisdom or tips and tricks? Like, what would be the first thing you would say? Try this, and that'll really get you started on how to use Visio. Maybe, Nishant, we can start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be soon available to a lot of Microsoft 365 customers, and we would want them to try this app as soon as possible. Throughout this podcast, we've been talking about all the benefits that you can get, but you will actually get to know more about it when you will start using it. So it's a very intuitive experience. I will encourage everyone to try as soon as this is available to you. And I feel availability of Visio app in this time is also very important when most of us are working virtually and collaborating virtually. It would provide them a new way to communicate, to share their ideas visually. And I think Mukul can add more to it, how this visual communication in these times is going to benefit our customers.
That's a great point, Nishant. And yes, just to add to that, we as the Visio team ourselves have been, using Visio a lot more during these times. Now that we are all working remotely in the absence of a physical whiteboard, so to say, just sharing these ideas like over Visio has been great. Visio just lets you visualize structured data so much better and lets you share that information so much, more easily that it's just become such a great tool for us, honestly, as a team here. We are on a Teams meeting and we want to sort of like ideate over the project or new project or new initiative. We simply just open our Visio canvas and start putting a bunch of boxes there, connecting them with arrows, putting times in there, putting information on there. And there you have it. You come up with a process document at the end of the meeting, and it's just great. Mind mapping, again, similar thing, just structuring our team, even sharing, how our team charter is, like who's responsible for what. We simply use, Visio's org chart. And the great thing is like it's integrated with other tools. So very easy to sort of use Visio diagrams and Visio snippets in other tools, right? Whether it be a PowerPoint or whether it be a Word doc. It's been a great collaboration tool for us, honestly. And so I would definitely encourage everyone to sort of give it a go now that it's available for everyone. The fact that, Plan 1, Plan 2 are sold separately, it's not going to hold you back. Now everyone gets to kind of play with Visio and see the power of visual collaboration.
We know that in your roles, you speak to lots of customers and lots of internal customers for Visio. What's something surprising that you've seen a customer do, or even yourself with Visio, that people might not know you could accomplish with the tool?
That's a great question. And there is one example which I have just perfect for this. I met with a customer who was potentially looking into doing something, whatever they were doing, through Visio instead of doing it on Excel. They had actually created something so complicated, using Visio with multiple Visio files like stitched together, which did a bunch of calculation in the background, that it was just mind-boggling. I didn't even know that something like that could be done in Visio, but they had used the power of, Visio APIs to build that solution internally for themselves. And the things it was doing, it just blew my mind. It had, visual layers like maps, which got stitched together. They had the whole routing system and everything. It didn't look like anything like how I would, imagine Visio to be, but just totally awesome. And I was very surprised. So it just goes on to show that, Visio has so much power that things we don't even imagine, those things are being done by our partners and customers just by tapping into that, those great APIs and the visual layer that Visio provides.
Mukul talked about a little bit complex example, like what all is possible with Visio, I've been surprised by how creative people have been with Visio. I've seen them using Visio to make a lot of different things that we probably did not think of. Sometimes for a game night, probably you can design the layout of a board game if you want to play that, or you can design a soccer field for your kids. So if you are creative, there are endless possibilities with Visio. And that is the power of a tool. It's on your creativity. You can do anything.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, you can create, algebra or geometry homeworks on Visio. You can play cards on Visio. Our MVPs have made, fantasy football gaming stuff even like on Visio. They're simple, but they are very creative, and that just goes on to shows the power that Visio gives you to be very creative.
It's really fascinating. What all of us here on today's podcast know by being inside at Microsoft is I don't think Microsoft as an organic entity is capable of thinking without putting it into a PowerPoint slide. If we are communicating a plan, customer feedback, whatever, we use PowerPoint as the container. We inject so much of our knowledge and data that we want to use to communicate. And with it being such a visual tool, this has just been a great discussion for me because, shame on me, but I do an awful lot of things with sort of accidental graphics that I can plug into PowerPoint. This is really something it's personally love having both of you on the show today so we can, it triggered that journey of understanding for other customers too.
No, thanks for sharing, Chris. And part of that has also been the fact that Visio has always been that desktop tool, right? We came to the web app game a little late, but now that we have a Visio web app, since 2018, things have been moving in that direction where folks like us are using Visio to do a lot more visualization wise in Visio rather than, let's say, going to something which is not meant for that. And the hope is that with this next wave of Visio users, now that it's going to be included in your M365 suite, we can definitely give this power to more users. People can have a blast, like just visually collaborating.
I love the concept of having a blast with a diagram and doing it with others. I don't mean that. I think that really is the entry points that are now available. Not only do you have access to it, but it brings it, like you mentioned. That's a great tip. Start it in Teams so that you can automatically collaborate, not only in the meeting, but the file then is in the right place. I'm looking at it from a start in SharePoint. There is now in the drop-down. Once you have it, you'll see it. You can start a new Visio drawing right in the document library. And of course, there's the home for Visio. So lots of great places to start, tips and tricks, use the templates. But thank you both for shepherding the product. I think on behalf of Microsoft, it has a wonderful history. We know that from a SharePoint perspective, but as it broadens out to the rest of the world and to a lot more users, not just at a price point that's right, but at a place where they access it. So thank you for sharing and taking time to explain a little bit more about the product and about the news of the day. So very exciting for you to start that journey as well. Last question, which is really just to ground beyond the links and the conversation today. Where can people turn to learn more about Visio? What are some of the easy things to remember that you would point people at?
Absolutely. You can visit our website anytime. We would be sharing the link of the announcement blog, which details out what all would be available in Visio and what all you can do. So you can read about that. And you can learn more on social media channels such as Twitter and LinkedIn. Yeah, there are a lot of places where you can learn more about Visio.
No, thanks, Nishant. And just to add to that, we do publish a lot of great tech articles on tech community for Visio. So definitely check that out.
We will put all those links, especially the really new announcement, the blog. We'll have a direct link to that and make sure we can fill up any place where people can go to turn to learn more or ask questions. We'll have that in the show notes for sure. But again, Nishant and Mukul, thank you for your time. And thank you again for this great product now available to so many people.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Up next on the Intrazone, events. Today we're sitting down to take a look at the events that are coming up over the coming weeks and months. We're starting to see many of them begin to take on hybrid form. So we're looking forward to being able to join many of you hopefully at an expo or conference hall somewhere near you. Mark, what do we have coming up?
Yeah, coming up as in literally right now is the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference. And you held in to mention it into the podcast because the news that you just heard with Nishant and Mukul about Visio is also going to be highlighted and carried through into Dan Holmes' keynote at the Collaboration Conference. But it's happening right now, June 8th through the 10th. It's hybrid, but you still have the ability. You don't have to be in Orlando, Florida. You can still join virtually if you want. And in fact, myself, I'm presenting virtually, and I'm really looking forward to being a part of the summit. To be real clear, it's a broader summit. So Microsoft 365, there'll be Dan Holmes' keynote. There will also be Caruana Gatumo's keynote around Teams, and Charles Lamanna will have a keynote focused about all of the things around Power Platform. In addition to, as you would expect, you'll get breakout sessions from Microsoft, MVP, and community members with sessions covering a whole host of topics. So great event, and interesting, like Chris said, this is the first real hybrid event that I've come across. And to have in person in Orlando, virtually, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. So hopefully you jump in.
Coming up later this month, the Microsoft Viva Ask Me Anything, or AMA. That's coming up on June 23rd. It'll be hosted on the Microsoft Tech community. And we'll be joined by members of the entire Viva product community to answer your questions and share our news. So it's always a fun forum. Look forward to that one.
The next pivot is into July. It's our partner conference, Inspire 2021. This will take place on July 14th to the 15th. It will be virtual, and you can look for updates around Microsoft Viva, lots of things across all of Microsoft, and all of the things that are both partner opportunities, but also some announcements coming from the different product groups. So a lot of news, a lot of learning in terms of how we work with partners, and certainly it's always a great event in terms of just catching up on where is Microsoft now, where are partners now.
And then later on in July, for a week in late July, the 26th to the 30th, SharePoint Fest is coming back in live physical form to Chicago. So Jeff Teeper and Dan Holm will both be on site delivering the keynote. So definitely make sure to check that out. If you find yourself near or traveling to Chicago this summer, that's going to be something definitely worth the trip.
Yeah, it's been really great to follow what the SharePoint Fest team is doing, starting with Chicago, and then in the rest of the year, we'll talk about their upcoming shows later. But it's really great to see, that in-person, very regionally focused with support from Microsoft MVPs. So I'm excited about that.
So those are events we wanted to share this week. Of course, we know there are many more coming up. So if you have an event that you're planning virtually, physically, hybrid, or all of the above, please write to us and we'd love to feature it on an upcoming episode of the Intrazone. Once again, we've made it through an entire episode of the Intrazone without a sports reference from me so far. And that's because, as far as I know, Visio can't be used to draw up football plays. But if there's a way to do it, I'm sure someone will figure that out too.
Chris, I think you could actually diagram the diamond shape of a baseball field really well with Visio. What do you think?
I absolutely think it is well suited to baseball. But Visio, as we learned, is suited to so many other things beyond just processes. And I really want to thank Mukul and Nishant for coming in, sharing their news, sharing their insight, sharing their vision about what Visio can do and what it will do for you.
We're going to put links to everything that Mukul and Nishant shared, especially their new blog around the news of the day, in the show notes and in the Intrazone blog. And you can check out our show page at aka.ms/theintrazone.
And if you're curious about other Microsoft programming, just visit aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts.
You can email us at theintrazone@microsoft.com or on Twitter @SharePoint, @mcashman, and @cmcnulty2000.
Word of mouth is still the best way people learn about podcasts. So if you enjoy this show, help us help more people. Share the SharePoint love and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We are your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty, and you've been listening to The Interzone, a show about the Microsoft 365 diagramming for everyone intelligent intranet.